Greetings, everyone. Let's call this a let's get real moment. Let's do some checking or some reality checks. Following up on the situation with the mother in Jamaica who lost her control almost a year ago in disciplining her kid. Um, that situation really opened my eyes and shed a light to a bigger problem than just her losing control that day, because it certainly highlights a lot of problems. And when I look at how this whole thing has unfolded, I look at the hypocrisy that exists in our communities, that double standard that exists in Jamaica, and how people choose to align themselves with what they categorize as support for people. I find that our people tend to side with wrongdoing, even though they like to act as if they are righteous and conscious. They are not. But I'm not here to throw the woman under the bus because, as I said before, she needs help, all kinds of help. But one of the things that came out of this, and where I see the media going with it, and where I see individuals who are trying to align themselves to that story, pretending that they're generous or they're kind or considerate. Some of the individuals aligning themselves to this is just trying to get attention for themselves. As this woman grapples with the situation that she finds herself in, so many things emerge from this whole story. For one, you hear cries from individuals, even those who are in defense of her, declaring about the abuse that they received in their own life. And for some reason, they're not thinking that you're talking about all the beatings that you got when you were a child and how beneficial it was for you. But when I want to say to some of these men that I hear talking about how their moms used to whoop their ass, I wonder if they understand that that whooping that they got has a lot to do with who they are as men today. Weak, broken men, men who are not making contributions to this world that we could call powerful. A lot of these men actually hate their mothers and internalize that abuse that they receive from some of these women. And when they get married, it becomes a problem in that household. And these men who claim that these beatings were good for them then turn around and become very abusive. But I'm not even going to just talk about these abusive men that exist in our Black communities. I'm going to talk about the absent men, the men who plant the seed in women's bodies and are not accountable for these seeds. So if I were to go on the street, I can guarantee you that if I find 10 Black boys and interview them, maybe two of them, and I'm being generous, maybe two out of the 10 might have a dad around. A lot of our boys are growing up without fathers, whether it's in America or any place in the Caribbean. And I can't speak so much about Africa because I've never been to Africa and I don't know a lot of people from Africa, unfortunately. But from the England and the United States and Jamaica, if you were to interview young boys about what their fathers mean to them, a lot of these men are absent. Hence, men growing up without really knowing what it's like to be a man, not having a positive role model. Because as much as we are women and we love our boys, we are lying to ourselves when we say that we can raise boys and they don't need their dads. So a lot of our boys are now quite feminine, and our men, when I look at social media these days, men dominate social media. More men are talkers these days than doers. So this talking thing comes from women. We've always been very talkative. Not to say everyone is talkative, but we are very expressive, and usually language is our strength. If you look at any country, when you check females, they tend to do better in language. But what we're seeing now through social media is a proliferation of men being more dominant with talking because they are raised with women and women are always talking, hence the boys take up that characteristic. Don't want to be offensive, it is the truth. So this lady is getting the well-needed help she needs for those kids to go to school. I am very much in favor of that. And what's happening, though, it is overshadowing the deeper problem of poverty that exists in Jamaica, for example, and how poverty then plays a big role in how we associate or deal with each other, how our frustration usually leads to conflict, and how when we use these negative ways of addressing conflict. Kids now don't know how to reason. Not just kids, adults. You can't have a simple conversation with people without them calling your names and tell, oh my goodness. There's an expression when I hear it now, I cringe. Everybody telling everybody to do whatever to their mother. And I'm sure that the expression was always around, but it's so common now. A child tells these things easily to adults. Adults repeat it to each other. It's just a big mess. And people always look for a situation to piggyback on, like the situation with this mom and her daughter, and lose sight of the real problem of what happened to that young girl. All of a sudden, her thing is kind of fading in the background. And I'm not saying we should talk about it and keep it forefront and center, but what I'm trying to say is what is demonstrated in this situation is that there's a woman, a single mother, raising these kids on her own, and after a time of doing it by herself and feeling the stress of being a single parent, lashes out in a way that so many people condemn her for. Where are these men? And this is to the government of Jamaica. Where are these men who are dropping their seeds and running away? Why are men in Jamaica thinking it's okay to have kids and not support their kids, or to just disappear? I could just say, I just don't feel like. Men should not get that kind of privilege to impregnate a woman and be able to just say, well, we're not together anymore, therefore I can just discard that woman. It doesn't really happen that way in first world countries. So if a man knows that the children that he produces are his responsibility, and he's going to be held accountable for those children that he leaves around town, that man would think twice about just running out there and not protecting himself. It's not just the woman's responsibility to protect herself, though it is, because when a woman has 5 kids and has no father, it is not the government's responsibility to take care of those kids. And so when I hear of this mother with these kids, you hear great empathy for her, great sympathy, but women have to start taking responsibility for their own action and stop having kids that they cannot afford. Today, I'm not going to feel sorry for the women. We're not in the 16th century when you didn't know how to protect yourself. You know now. And so I'm not going to really feel too sorry for the mother that she's a single parent raising these kids on her own, because at the end of the day, it's your choice to get involved with men who make no kind of commitment to you. And when I say commitment, I'm not talking about marriage. I'm talking about the fact that you have kids with this man and he gets to walk free because, one, the government or the country doesn't put things in place to make sure these deadbeat dads take responsibility for their children. And also, these women have to take responsibility also to say, if I'm going to be involved with somebody and that person is not able to take care of my children, then I shouldn't be having more kids. So as the story, unfolds, and this woman still, faces prosecution from the law, I'm hoping that out of this terrible situation will come changes, not for other women to look and say, well, when that lady beat her kids, her life changed and things got better, but that the men who are responsible for these children will understand that the law, and we have enough law, and I shouldn't be promoting creating new laws, But there should be systems in place to ensure that every single man that gets a female pregnant must be responsible for that. And if you find that these kids are not going to school, the first thing the government is supposed to do is find these men. And if the women won't tell you where to find these men, then you put pressure on these women. Because sometimes women hide the fact that they don't know where the father of their kids are because they want to get money from the government in these parts. There's no such social network in Jamaica apart from the PATH program. But even so, systems must be put in place to find these deadbeat dads. And what is necessary is some of these women to receive counseling. What I'm trying to say, and again, I'm trying because I'm struggling to say that the biggest problems we're having is the absence of men in the households, or the absence of men in their children's lives, particularly boys. Boys need their dads. And if their fathers are not around, they need positive, because I mean, if the dad is a criminal, I don't see the point in him, being physically involved, but financially, he should be involved in that child's life. The issue at hand is absentee fathers. And the issue at hand also is women who are not taking responsibility for their own action. I do not see women who have multiple children with different fathers or even the same dad that does not demand support for those kids. And it's something that I've been guilty of too, because when you're younger, you want to prove that you're independent and that you don't need anything from a man. But you need support for your kids. You can't afford to be selfish or allow your ego or your pride to cause your kids to go without. It's not right. It's not right. Too many Black men are absent from their children's life. And too many women make it too easy for men to come and impregnate them and leave them stranded. It takes two. And oftentimes, after the father neglects and abandons the family, and the woman now becomes overwhelmed and frustrated by the burden that's left upon her, what does she do? She takes out her frustration upon the kids. Sometimes not intentionally, but whether you intend it or not, the child that's left broken. The stories I'm hearing about the kinds of abuse that people receive from their moms or their dads in some cases, but in this case, people are talking about how their moms were wonderful and how their moms beat them, how their moms tied them up in ants nests, how their moms broke their head with something that they threw after them. These are not parenting skills, or these are not disciplining kind of methods. These are violence measured out on the very people that you should love the most and the ones that the kids love the most. Deadbeat fathers we're talking about in this video, and women who are not exercising caution and therefore making themselves look like victims. You're not a victim when you have 3, 4, or 5 kids. You lay down with these different men and allow them to impregnate you, and then you want the rest of the world to feel sorry for you. Well, I don't feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for the kids. And what I feel sorry about the most is that most of these kids are going to come and repeat the cycle. So as we're moving forward, and I don't think the situation in Jamaica is really moving forward from what I'm seeing. We're seeing individuals coming forward and helping the mother because they hear the kids are struggling and they're not going to school. I'm happy for that. But at the same time, let's not sugarcoat and pretty up the thing. Let's look at what is happening, because if we don't fix that, the current situation of violence in Jamaica as it exists will not change. The biggest part of violence is starting at home. The brutality the kids experience at home spill in the schools, spill in the community. Hence, people can't have rational conversation. If you disagree with me, I'm going to disrespect you and everybody that ever existed in your generation. And, before you know it, somebody is pulling a knife or pulling a gun, or somebody is going on social media and thinking of the most outrageous things to say to each other. It's so sad. It's very pathetic. There is a kind of rage that exists in Black people, and usually we turn it onto ourselves or to each other. It's time for that to stop. The absence of fathers. Can I hear from somebody? Can I hear from you? Did you grow up with your father? What role did your father play in your life? So, my father, let me start by saying my father was in my life, but I didn't grow up with him. However, his contributions were sparse, and you know, we struggled because of it. But he had a lot of children, 10 or more kids that he fathered. And it's time for Black men to stop walking around. You should be embarrassed to be telling people that, yeah, oh, I got 5 youth, I got 6 youth. What's the point in having all these kids and bragging about how many kids you have when you're not taking care of these kids? They don't know you. There are too many young boys that come to me in tears, and these men are not realizing how it's affecting our boys. They come to me in tears saying, their father not paying any attention to them. Sometimes they talk about their father migrating, marrying other women, and having children with other women. And when the kids watch how they worship those kids because, they're marrying people of other race, and because of their terrible self-esteem, they love the offspring of these other women more than they do their little Black boys in Jamaica. And it affects these kids' self-esteem so much. They're hurt. I can't tell you the amount of boys who have come to me and say, hey, I want to learn to read because my father doesn't like me and I want to show him. They're doing all kinds of stuff to get the attention of their father. And sometimes girls act out and disrespect their mothers too, because when they see the struggles and the suffering, and sometimes they see how stupid their moms are, one man after the other coming in and always coming in, and all they leave behind is a baby. Time for us to wake up and stop, pretending that, these kids that we got are so rotten and we have no idea why they're this way. They're this way because of our choices that we make, our terrible choices that we make sometimes, and our failure to try to do different, our failure to learn from our mistakes, and often taking out our frustration or our poor choices on our offspring, thereby repeating the cycle. Let me hear from you. Did you grow up with your dad? Or if you didn't, how influential was he in your life? Be blessed, everyone.